And now, live from Chicago, here is the Black Knight of Talk Radio, James Arthur Jancik.
John Kay, the singer, leader, songwriter of the band Steppenwolf, he born in Prussia, East Prussia, which later became East Germany. When he was less than a year old, his mother fled with him. His father died while fighting in Russia. His mother fled into communist-controlled East Germany. In 1958, he immigrated with his mother and stepfather to Toronto. And he picked up English from listening to those DJs who dominated the airwaves. In the late 60s, Steppenwolf was born. The lyrics of the songs mean as much today or more than they did when they first were released. John Kay joins us for a rare interview looking at both sides of the 60s, so to speak. And welcome to Feet to Fire, John.
Hey, good to be finally part of it. This time I had my my sundial set for the right day and time, and here we are. Good to hear your voice.
A lot of people look at the 60s kind of romantically, and some look at them with disdain. What was it like then when you were coming up with the music and the commentary? What was the political scene then?
On the one hand, it was tremendously exciting, idealistic, forward-looking, whether the counterculture or whatever you want, young people who came through the educational system and truly believed in what our founding fathers had given us as a promise to fulfill someday, liberty and justice for all and all the rest of it. But simultaneously, of course, we had absolute chaotic situations, violence, I'm talking about like 68. That was the first year the Wolf was on the road with its first album out, was Born to Be Wild, going up the charts in a tour bus crisscrossing the United States, going into the Deep South, where we had just, shortly thereafter we saw the film Easy Rider that we became part of musically. There was a film about what not to do in the Deep South, and here we were, going through Mississippi and Alabama in our bus at 3 a.m, kind of going, is this okay? So there were a lot of things going on simultaneously in the 60s, which were promising, disappointing. Obviously, I recall being a young guy living in Buffalo, New York, working at a factory trying to make a few bucks to buy a better instrument, and hearing about JFK's assassination. Well, here we are then a few years later in the late 60s, and we got Martin Luther King, we got Robert Kennedy, we have this is all in 1 year, for God's sakes. I think we landed on the moon that year or the year after. There were all sorts of things going on. The Democratic Convention in Chicago, which, depending on your point of view, was a police or a hippie riot. And so how do you sort all of that out? Here we were, five guys, all excited about the fact that some music we were making seemed to appeal to at least a component of our peer group, going up the charts, and raging testosterone and all sorts of stuff going on. And then you turn on the TV, and there are times like where you think, what's going on? Is the country coming apart at the seams? There are guys coming back from Vietnam telling us stuff about what's going on over there, telling us the music that Hendrix and, Cream and Creedence Clearwater and Steppenwolf and others were making found its way all the way into the bush. I'm giving you an extremely long-winded answer here to your question, but the point is, there wasn't a single, for me anyway, a single sentence answer to your question, because it was so many things simultaneously. One day, you would be, at the top of the mountain saying, hey, our age group is actually holding the feet to the fire of the previous generation, saying, deliver on the promise, deliver on what America can become and is still, reaching for. And then the next day you see some of those who are trying to get us there being assassinated and lying in a pool of blood. So there was a lot of stuff going on where you didn't know where you were from one day to the next. The drugs were involved in this too. If I have one major regret about the 60s, it is the fact that we wasted a tremendous amount of idealism, energy and other attributes of youth, and did not take advantage of the experience and at least partial wisdom that had been gathered by the previous generation, because unfortunately the generation gap was not just an empty phrase. There was a lot of finger pointing of us versus them. You know, the young ones saying, you guys screwed all of this up, we're going to take over and show you a better way. And the older ones saying, how dare you, you whippersnappers, you did not live through the Depression, you did not fight in World War II. How dare you tell us that what we've worked so hard to build is not of value, and that all of our, you know, hard-earned materialism doesn't mean anything to you. So there was a lot of that. You know, these were two forces that could have moved the country forward together, but instead I think the infighting really dissipated a lot of energy and wasted a golden opportunity.
Well, that's why I think it's very important for this time around, as I'm calling it, that people who were there prior to get together and kind of compare notes, compare dreams, energies, and wishes. And
it worries me when younger people fall into lockstep with the value system of the previous generation without questioning. And let me take a look at what I've been taught so far. Does this really hold up? You know, does this work for me? There are a lot of young people out there, thank goodness, who, in spite of being raised on materialism and the distractions of, you know, heavy sensory bombardment of whatever all is out there, video games and the like, there are quite a few of them who have shown by example, whether it was during the aftermath of the Katrina disaster, you know, who wound up going down to the Gulf Coast during spring break. Many young people went down to the Gulf Coast to help rebuild the homes of those who've lost everything in Katrina, etc. To me, that was hugely important, and I read, in fact, not that long ago, perhaps a year ago or so, that volunteerism in the United States had, at that point, and I suspect it still is, been at its highest point in 30 years, across the board, you know, from the Peace Corps to local outfits, etc. That, to me, is a very important barometer reading of a fair amount of goodwill, certainly a reservoir of untapped, energy out there. I salute anyone, particularly those who are in their 20s or maybe even early 30s, who care enough to join the Peace Corps for the purpose of lending a hand to those who need help in various ways, education, whatever it is. Well, again, people like that who manage to come through that, that whole upbringing of distraction and self-satisfaction and everything else, and wind up with a willingness to lend a hand for the greater good, I have to salute them, because they have shown through their actions that inner core of their humanity is alive and well, and they, to me, are some of the undersung heroes of our current situation.
Well, you bring with you a tremendous amount of energy of positiveness. I mean, I had Bill Ayer on here talking about from the Weatherman. His comment was, when he looked back at what he did, he said, well, try something else, but keep going. He's still working. He's still doing it. And it's great to get that kind of energy to keep going, because I think we're in a fulcrum, a real fulcrum. It's going to take the wisdom and energy from the past and the present to work it. And I'm telling you, I'm really excited hearing you talk.
Well, I am at times like the rest of us. You know, I think many of us have had this experience where you either turn on the TV or you pick up the newspaper or whatever, or even on the Internet, and in spite of what I consider to be not exactly the best moments in American history right now, nevertheless, I don't believe that we should give up on America. There are too many people doing great things and have the right idea, from my perspective, certainly, to take such a defeatist attitude. And that's the point that I'm really driving at here, is that the sliding into the abyss of cynicism and defeatism is something that, when I stand on the precipice of that, when I feel myself in danger of going there, it is usually the exposure to the positive life forces out there who are making a real difference in the world that I gravitate to, and whose ranks I have in a small way recently joined.